was an unfortunate incident that I witnessed on the roads of Mumbai one day coming back from work when I was still in advertising, and I saw an incident of abuse on the roads, busy streets of Mumbai, in fact a very busy traffic junction, of a little girl. And it just stayed with me. It bothered me because my own daughters at that time were about the same age, and I kept thinking if it was my child over there. And the first thing was just anger about, how can parents be so irresponsible? And then I started thinking about just, can children not even expect to be safe? These are little children, they're babies. Just safety of babies itself is such a big question mark in the country. I witnessed this incident. I really want to be part of the solution in some way.
Priya, super excited to have you on this conversation today.
Very excited to be here and looking forward to it.
Okay, so everybody knows you as Priya, CEO of Antarang. Tell me something that LinkedIn doesn't know.
Okay, so LinkedIn doesn't really know that I started my life, it seems almost like another life, in advertising. I went to business school and I was in advertising for 10 years, and I absolutely loved the buzz, creativity and the everyday energy and action of advertising.
You were an advertising person?
Yes.
Wow. And from advertising, now you run a beautiful NGO by the name of Antarang. How did that happen?
It was completely a chance encounter that I would say it was an unfortunate incident that I witnessed on the roads of Mumbai one day coming back from work when I was still in advertising, and I saw an incident of abuse on the roads, busy streets of Mumbai, in fact a very busy traffic junction, of a little girl. And it just stayed with me. It bothered me because my own daughters at that time were about the same age, and I kept thinking if it was my child over there, I would have taken that perpetrator to task for sure. One, it would not have happened. The first thing was just anger about, how can parents be so irresponsible? And then then I started thinking about just, can children not even expect to be safe? These are little children, they're babies. Just safety of babies itself is such a big question mark in the country. But it just stayed with me. It just wouldn't let me sleep in peace. Then, in those days we used to volunteer to go and cut a cake with an NGO on your birthday, and you feel you're giving back in some way. So my organization had ties with an organization like that. So I wrote into that organization to say that I witnessed this incident. I really want to be, part of the solution in some way. And that organization happened to be Akanksha. The person I met was Shaheen Mistry, and Shaheen being Shaheen was a force of nature, and she almost convinced me there and then that to be part of the solution, I needed to be on the inside of the organization and not just as a volunteer. That's how my journey in the sector started off. I'm very grateful in retrospect that Akanksha was the first organization that I worked in, got to work closely with Shaheen, saw how, you can honestly make a difference to the world. It just requires you to be committed, have a clear vision, and then things start aligning because you become intentional with whatever you do.
And was the switch immediate, or did it take some time to adjust into the sector from a corporate job and moving into and working on ground?
Honestly, there was no, I did not feel any transition pains, except of course, we needed two incomes at that time. We had young children. So the money kind of got a little bit, lack of it took some time to get used to. But Akanksha was run really well. The transition was super easy. Just the passion, the commitment, the clarity of the vision was so. It was just so palpable, and it was just so real that the transition was never really an issue at all for me.
And how did Antarang, the concept, start?
So at Akanksha, everyone teaches. So I also joined in as a teacher. I taught adolescents, and I was quite happy when I was, told that I'll be working with one of the highest performing teachers in a center with adolescent children. And because I had kids who were 5 and 6 years old and 2 years old, I was like, anyone above the age of 10 has to be easier, without a doubt. So that's how I started working with these 13, 14-year-olds. I think the first 1 year was the toughest year of my life, where you felt rejection every single day. Getting across to a teenager today, to this date, is the toughest thing in the world.
Right.
But once you're a teacher, you're always a teacher. The kids kept in touch with me. And as they grew, they were the first in their families, many of them, to even go up to class 10 or go up to class 12. And then what? Right? We all, as a nation, we believe कि पढ़ाई करोगे तो life बन जाएगी. But how does that transition happen? What is that magic thing that happens when you complete a class 10 or class 12 that is so different from that of your parents who probably haven't completed school? That's a black box. There's no bridge today. And the kids would struggle. They just wouldn't know where to go, what courses to pick, how to pick a career, today. How do you make those decisions? And that bridge is what we said we'll start building. Nice. Initially, it was just intuitive. I would just guilt my business class friends at that time. They were all doing well in different sectors to say, hey, just give up your Sunday siesta one day. It started off as a Sunday to Sunday program. Oh, nice. And Dasra had this lovely office in Santa Cruz. So Neera and Deval said, that space is available, so why don't you just use the space on a Sunday? And people from different sectors would come and talk to them about how to get into, say, aviation or banking or retail or hospitality, and what would set them up for success. That's how it started. And then slowly it was 2 kids, became 10, became 20, and it started growing. And we said, okay, this is a need. There's a need. There is no guidance that's available. And that's how the vision for Antarang being a bridge from school to work slowly started forming.
So there was no business plan. It was hitting the ground and starting.
So initially, it was definitely hitting the ground and starting. Then we started looking into the data. Then we realized that dropout rates are really, really high, right? 1 in 2 kids end up dropping out of school. And then when we dug deeper into the why of the dropouts, we said the 25 to 30% of students ended up dropping out because they simply didn't know what to do, right? We say that education will change lives. How much education is unclear. So is class 10 enough? Is class 12 enough? What do you need to do? What will set you up for success? It was just that lack of awareness itself. Right? That was the main. The second is a lack of academic ability. Today we know learning outcomes, even now at the secondary school level, are pretty dismal. Right? The majority of secondary school kids today still only read and write at, say, a class 7 level. Your ASR data keeps showing that. The second is the academic ability. So, and the misconception that unless you're academically bright, you don't have too many career options, right? That is a huge misconception today. Yeah. So that was the second big reason. And then it would be financial reasons. I need to start working. And all of this meant that it was solvable, right? It just meant mapping pathways for different needs for different students. It was doable. And we said if we are able to actually put together this bridge with multiple pathways, we can actually solve close to 60% of the dropout issue. And 60% of 103 million is a massive number, right? If we can solve for it, it makes sense. So we looked at it as solving the problem. And that's how then the whole, okay, then where do you start working? Who do you work with? Because the problem is so huge, we can't do it alone. And we shouldn't be doing it alone, right? You can't become another large entity. If you're a not-for-profit, ideally, you should exist to solve the problem, fill the gap, and exit once that, we needed to have that exit quite clear right from the get-go. And we said, okay, the most vulnerable 30% of students are in government schools today. Because a family with even a little bit of disposable income will send their kids to a low-cost private school. It may not be of high quality, but they would much rather send them to a private school. So we said, okay, can we start with government schools and with those students and ensure that we're bringing down dropout rates and improving transition rates, transition from class 10 and 12 on to either higher vocational education or internships, apprenticeships, and work. And that's how the model became clearer and clearer and clearer.
And the initial bunch of students that came, were they the entire bunch or kids with very strong aspirations? How did that happen?
That's a great question. So initially it was pretty self-selected, right? Okay. Because it started with 2-3 of my old students from Akanksha. Then slowly that news spread. They would bring their friends, and then that's how it grows. So it was self-selected. Okay. So obviously it was easier. They would complete and at that time it was a 3-month model where they would come every day for 2 to 2.5 hours, and we'd expose them. We'd first take it, still it followed the same map. We looked at a lot of international programs that were working. At that time there was a very successful program called Chile Joven that worked in Latin America, because Latin America has a similar problem of high rates of youth unemployment, where they used a very similar model to bring back what they call disengaged youth back to career pathways, right? Where it began with understanding yourself. What are my interests? What are my aptitudes? What are my realities? What are then the career awareness? What are the various opportunities out there? And then making a career plan, and then building just core employability skills, transferable skills that you and I take for granted because of the the exposure we've had and the kind of environment that we come from. How do you write an email? How do you like basically what is today now started to get to know, be known as the 7 C's, your communication, collaboration, critical thinking, commercial ability, what we call conscience or basic work ethics, right? All of that we started working on, and then we'd connect them either to like a skilling program or to employment. Right? We are also as a nation investing upwards of 2,000 crores year on year on skilling with not great outcomes there. So we said, how can we leverage all of that that's already going, identify the top class skilling programs, and then connect the students there and then connect them to work. Or if they wanted to work right away, we'd connect them to internships or part-time jobs, but still insist that they have some qualification or certification. So that's how the model slowly started. It began with self-selection, and then slowly we said, where will we find them? We'd find them in schools, we'd find them in communities if they had dropped out already. So it was like a model that worked in both schools, high schools at 11th, 12th level, in a few junior colleges, because Maharashtra had junior colleges, but other states had schools, and then in communities as well. So then it became part of the system. It started with kids self-selecting, and then it became part of the system.
And which is the right age for them to start this process?
So now increasingly there's research that's available to say from middle school on, if you get them to start thinking about what they want to do with their futures, the propensity of them getting serious is higher. But all of the programs that are today running across the world, career readiness and career awareness programs, all start at the high school stage, because it starts becoming very real. Right? In grade 9, after grade 10, I have to choose subjects in many of the country. I mean, in ours, you have to, then it's almost like your pathways are selected, right? And in some cases, it's also irreversible. For example, if you don't take sciences and then you want a STEM career later on, it becomes really hard to retrace your steps. So 9th is when 8th is when it starts off. And then 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th is a very intensive module.
Yeah. And when you, so it's a very beautiful model, because you're making them ready for employment, which means they were going to get paid. So intuitively, it becomes very easy to get into the community. But is that real? When you engage with community, is that the same kind of reception you receive?
With younger kids, no, because they feel earning is far away, right? And that's the age that we want to engage, because if you engage them after 18, we used to do that actually. It's almost becomes a situation where it's too little, too late. So you do need them earlier. So it's not an easy sell, so to speak, in communities. But in schools, today we work solely in government schools across the way. Schools get it immediately. It's a no-brainer. Do your children need to know what next after class 10 and class 12? Do you want all of them to go on to either higher vocational education? Do you want them to have a clear career plan and be successful in life? That answer is yes.
Yes.
And that now has become easier. Earlier, it was the whole focus was on skilling, teach them a skill.
Yeah.
But now it's become increasingly easy for us to say that, but what skill would they need to choose? They have to understand how to make that decision. And that comes earlier on. But it took us 9 to 10 years, consistently having that same message of you need to start early, children need to be aware. Right? You only aspire for what you know is possible.
Yeah.
If I don't even know that today I can be, say, for example, a conservationist, how will I even aspire for that?
Yeah,
I may be living in
absolutely.
Nagaland and I may be living,
Yeah.
where biodiversity is fantastic or not there at all
Yeah.
in the case of Nagaland. But then if I don't know it, I can monetize that
Yeah.
skill. I won't pick that up. So I think now everyone is getting it. And the demand for what we offer, so to speak, is much higher.
Much higher. So, which is the first story that still sticks with you of success?
So many of them. And the nicest part is that wherever I travel, there are alumni today, our older alumni who I meet. So many, honestly. If I have to pick, I would pick Raj Mohan. Today, he is a successful post-production. He's a producer with Studios. And, when we met him, he was in class 11. And he was quite clear he's going to become a mechanic because that's what his father wanted him to do. Do a vocational program and become a mechanic. You need to start earning. He was in the railroad community. And but the facilitator who was working with him realized that he would keep taking her phone, making little videos, editing it, and then sending it back to her. And they were really good of, little snippets of the class. He had an eye for it. So she spoke to him to say, why don't you look at media and entertainment as a career opportunity? And he said, usme paisa nahi banega, my father will never agree, right? But she spoke to the parents and we got him an internship at that time with a small studio, and as just a production executive, as a coordinator, assistant. So he did everything. He did whatever it took. And I still remember, he studied in SIES after 12th standard as well. And then after college, he would go for his internship. And he says, I've done everything from sweeping, swabbing, cleaning, going and picking up a particular shoe color because that's what was needed to the shoot, making coffee, whatever it takes, right? Like he had that thing of I will do whatever it takes, and slowly grew. And today he works at Z Studios, and he's also a great editor. So whenever we call him to help us with something, he's in Dubai or he's traveling all over the world. It's really great to see that. Or Priyanka, who now works with Save the Children in fundraising. We have so many success stories, and it's possible, and that gives us that, Chandu, who works at JP Morgan today. So there are so many success stories where they've really broken many of these barriers that are there, or glass ceilings that are there, because of where they came from, what was the opportunities that they thought was possible. And once that gets broken, and there's no stopping them really.
And what do they fondly call you?
It's either Priya Di or Priya Ma'am, unfortunately. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. So now let me take a look into your journey as a woman leader. Being a woman leader has its challenges, has got its pluses as well. So what has been your learning?
I'll start with the pluses. I think as a woman leader, which is something that I recall now or I'm grateful for, is that you don't go in with a lot of expectation. You go in expecting challenges, and you go in expecting a struggle. And when sometimes it isn't, you're pleasantly surprised. So I think there's that feeling of gratitude, and that feeling of you're willing to go that extra mile, because you're always conditioned to do that as a woman, right? Occupying space is not easy, at least for me as a woman. The conditioning that I had is that make sure that everyone around you is also seen, heard, and it's not just yours. That I think that the innate need to collaborate comes quite naturally. Maybe because of, and I mean, I can't generalize it for all women, definitely for me as a woman, and because of the conditioning that I've had. So it did come easy to collaborate. It did come easy to want to include others in that journey. So as a result, while it's hard, I mean, entrepreneurship is hard at any point in time, it didn't always feel lonely because there were enough people around. There was always, the board was there, the team was there, your, donors became partners and sort of thought partners in the process. Your peers were there. Nikita, I've known right from like the day I set up Antarang, people like that who are just Suparna at Angan, who continues to be a, dear friend and a thought partner. So many of them who just sort of become almost co-collaborators or co-conspirators on the way. So I think that was the easy part. The tough part is, it is a boys' club in a lot of places. It's not easy. Working with the state also means that a lot of the bureaucrats today, they are older men, and many of the informal conversations don't happen so easily, right? It didn't. I mean, things are changing slowly with, I guess, also me growing older, and like, a lot of times I'm sometimes now the oldest person in the room as well. That changes the dynamics and definitely becomes easier as you grow older as well. But I think really, initially that was, it is a boys' club. It's hard to get a break into. If you really think about some of the largest not-for-profits today, they are led by men still. There are fewer organizations, large organizations that are led by women that are very visible. It's not that they're not there, but they're fewer. Most of it is still led by men. So there is, and you also have, I've had, for example, instances on panels where your industry colleagues who are men sort of, almost put you down because you're a woman. And if you're a woman who comes from maybe relative privilege also, it's even more easy to dismiss you, because it seems almost as if this is a nice to do and not that it's your chosen path for life, right? As much as his path for life is. So I think the ability to get dismissed is also much, much higher. Yeah, and I've also found that as I've been in pitches where it could have been very similar pitches on both sides, but as a woman, you are questioned a lot more about the audacity of your ambitions or aspirations, to say, oh, really, you're talking about 5 million, but how are you going to get there? And then as a woman, you learn to really prepare before you go, right? You rarely are able to wing it. You actually go prepared. You know your stuff. You know your work inside out. You've been on the field. You know exactly what you're talking about. But there's a lot more explaining to do.
Okay. So you spoke about collaborations. You spoke about your mentors and partners. The team plays a very important role as well. So how have you gone about building your team?
So we have a really, really vibrant and extremely, I would say, how do you call it? Like a team that's very close to the mission in many ways, right? So and we operate as different units when required, and as a very cohesive whole as when required. We're now a pretty large team. We have more than 120 full-time staff. We also have 220 part-time facilitators. So it's a pretty large team that's there. Yeah. A lot of our team today have been there for quite a number of years as well. At least senior leadership have been there. We're 12 years old, and most of the senior leadership team have been there at least 6 plus, so more than half of our journey as well. A lot of our, managerial team upwards are young people who started with us, their careers with us, and then they've grown. 33% of our team is our own alumni who have lived experience of the place over there. So I think the best part about the team is that we are able to hold each other accountable. There is honest feedback that's given. There's a lot of openness to want to learn and grow. There's a lot of openness to making mistakes, because it's part of it. In fact, I can safely say that I'm probably the worst in taking feedback, and I'm constantly being called out for that, to say that, but you don't have to get defensive. We're just saying that this did not work, or what you did in that particular meeting did not work, and you need to know that. Or the way you spoke to this person was not productive. It didn't help them feel good about what they did. And I can say that I'm the most defensive, and I'm learning how to be more open. But feedback, the team is able to give this kind of feedback to each other in the gentlest and most productive, constructive way possible. And that's a very special team to be part of. And I always feel really privileged to be part of that team and be part of that culture as well. And it's a culture that's just grown. It's not imposed upon, or it isn't one brand of it. It's not one person's. It's just it's like what Rapti, our lead director of talent and culture, she just says it's just a lovely Antarangi way of doing it. It flows. Yeah. So it's just a organically built team.
I'm because we work extensively in the talent space, right? So this culture is something which is very interesting take, because at times culture is open to change, because it's like you said, it's organic. What if you start seeing that this culture you're talking about, it's changing? So how would your reaction be, or will you try to hold it back? Yeah.
See, culture is evolving, like you rightly said. It will change and morph. But there are basic tenets, to my mind, that what we hold dear, if they change, then it becomes another organization. Right? And those are the values that you hold true. For example, we will always be collaborative and not competitive, right? And it's a hard one to grapple with. It's a hard one for younger folks who go into government meetings and say that, but there was this other organization who purposely cut us out. But you keep telling us that we should be collaborative, or our managers keep telling us, no, but that's not the way we do it. We need to include. Then what happens? And then we keep pushing back to say, but is it going to make you feel? Firstly, will you be able to do it alone? Forget anything. Like a massive state like Rajasthan, right? Is it even? We are not from there, right? Of course, we have local teams. We are the career experts over there. What would make most sense? Someone who knows that geography really well, right? And what is our objective? Our objective is to make sure that no student is dropping out. No student is is what we call NEET, right? Not in education, employment, or training. That's our objective. Does it matter to us who does it? It really shouldn't, right? How do you keep the objective front and center? And what is success for us? If there are more and more people working on it, the problem is solved and we can exit and find the next problem. That's success. So I think if there are these values that don't change, that's absolutely fine. And in fact, if you go to any of our offices, the culture of each office is very different. The Goa Antarang office works very differently. Simple things like nobody brings an entire lunch dabba. They all bring one dish and then they sit around and it becomes like a full meal, right? And they have morning rituals which look very, very different. Culturally, there is no hard job roles. It's a very fluid, if someone's not there, I'll also scan OMRs, I'll also go and observe in a classroom. They sort of make up for each other. Whereas the Bombay office is much more, very clear roles. There are different ways of doing things. We all work in little islands over here, Udaipur office is even very different. So culturally, they all are different, but
Values.
some of the base values are similar.
Interesting. We spoke about women leadership. We spoke about teams. I would love to get your take on how you are consciously working towards inclusion in your team, given your experiences.
So there are, like, inclusion is in structure, inclusion is in policies, and inclusion is in practices, right? Um, and a lot of times actions drive the others. So how do you make sure that every voice is heard, right, and everyone has feels that there is enough decision making opportunity, decision making power as well, right? There is nobody, you'll rarely find in an Antarang office where you ask them for something and where they say that we don't know and we'll have to. I mean, if they don't know about an issue, it's a different thing. But if they can weigh in, or they can give an opinion, or they can take a decision, they will take that decision.
Right.
They won't have to say that हमें किसी से पूछना पड़ेगा. That will not happen, right? So that's
Right.
the ability to work with autonomy, and is given. And it's quite, sometimes you think about it. So Sonal, for example, who leads our government partnerships work in Maharashtra, she's all of 22, and the grace and confidence with which she presents even to a principal secretary is pretty phenomenal to see. It's because she's been given that autonomy. She's been given enough opportunities to master what she needs to do. She knows exactly what is required of her. And she has lived experience. She's our alumni. So she's sort of grown into that role. She's lived through that, and she's grown into that.
Right.
So I think that, that framework of making sure that purpose is clear, there's enough autonomy, and there are enough opportunities to master what you need to do, is something that we try and practice as much as possible. So that's on the practice, right, where everyone feels like they run the organization, and they run the vertical that they're part of. A lot of accountability that's given. In terms of policies, a whole bunch of it, including flexible working, including making sure that there are young people who are part of it. We work for young people. So unless it's the average age is purposely kept below 28. Okay. So that there is enough youth voice in it. So we do have a lot of very young managers, for example, right? Where is it a struggle? Yes, it's a struggle to manage, but it's a struggle to manage people at any age. So we help them, we coach them through that process. There are new manager coaching programs that are there. So it's, again, inclusion works in gender, it's age, it's lived experience, where you come from, the kind of communities they represent, the kind of marginalizations and vulnerabilities that they represent. So it's in the policies, right from recruitment to how people are, rise through the various roles, the kind of roles that they hold. Fundraising, today it's like a very lean 3-member team, right? Again, the senior associate who represents Antarang at many forums, Nikesh, is again one of our own alums.
Right.
So who better to really represent the organization than him? He's almost always inspiring whenever he goes into any conversation. So I think it's in the policies that we have, the way we hire, the way we work as an organization, the way we all get together every month. We have an all-hands staff meeting every single month, which is a mega production because it's virtual teams. In each team is working in person in their office, and we're all connected virtually. So there are tech backends that are being managed. So that's in the in sort of the policies as well. Right. And then there's all the processes today that we follow as well are very are quite naturally inclusive, I would say. And structures that are put in, right, making sure that there is representation of women, there is representation of vulnerabilities that are there.
It's so beautiful that you have managed to create this lovely, vibrant team.
I didn't do it alone. I have to say that my role is still minimal. It is a large team. We have an extremely engaged board. And also, what was important in the early years is that I had a founding partner, Rita, with me.
Right.
And this is something I always talk about, because when you're an entrepreneur, you come in with your strength. My strength was programmatic. I knew what, I work best in the classroom, right? That's where I derive my energy from, and all my experience with young people is from the classroom. So I knew exactly what young people needed, how to structure lessons. So I was programmatic, whereas Rita was there as the external facing person of the organization, made sure that we had the funding that was available. Very, very, I feel, may not have been possible, the kind of growth that we've had as an organization. It was having the right people at the right time, and it's never one person.
Yeah. So since you mentioned that specifically, okay, I feel that one of the very critical challenge that an entrepreneur has to deal with, apart from having a very strong program and quality, or program equivalent product or service, whatever, is cash flow, right? So how has your journey been overall? How have you managed that journey? Because that is very important to existence.
It's for us, we've always been budgeting well and making sure that we're raising funding in a very thought through fashion. So like I said right at the beginning, there was a founding partner with complete ownership and accountability who was driving that part of the work. So we could do both. Otherwise, it's very hard to be financially stable and programmatically strong, right? You need solid evidence on the ground. Your program has to work, and you also need to make sure that you're financially viable. And more often than not, it's one person driving both. It's very difficult, right? I had the good fortune to focus on programmatically making sure that it was a strong program. There's enough evidence to be built over there. Always had really strong team members driving the program, and you've met so many of them, whether it was Sherry or now Swati and Priyanka who drive the programs, or we've always had really strong program folks. Akshay is there, Namrata is there. So we've had really strong program folks driving it. Initially it was me plus, and now it's a solid team that's driving this. And then now I'm able to focus much more on the external facing, like the funding part of it. But it does need resources on both sides.
Exactly.
And therefore, it was relatively easier. Fundraising is never easy, right? And for a grant-funded organization like ours, we don't have a monetizing model as yet. So it is hard. You need to make sure that you're constantly on top of cash flows. And it's not just funding availability, but it's also, like you rightly said, cash flow availability. I have commitments, but the commitments are coming in Q4. I need money in Q1, which means how do you have healthy reserves, right? Again, thinking through that, how much reserves do I have to maintain, making sure it's compliant, right? We're not running foul of any of the compliances that are required. We've had strong CFOs again, always, and who've helped manage that part of it.
Right.
So it is teamwork. It is making sure that you have all these resources in place, whether part-time, full-time, pro bono, but making sure that you have that and someone is overseeing it, while you as the founder, you're focused on what your strength is.
Correct. This is like a super important lesson for anybody starting up, to be very honest. Okay, now when it comes to the future of Antarang for the next 10 years, what does it look like for you?
So I'm an Ashoka fellow, and Ashoka has this beautiful frame of scaling out, scaling up, and scaling deep, right? So we focused a lot on scaling out and scaling up, which is making sure that the problem is solved for as many number of students as possible, young people as possible, and it's sustained through existing systems. So we work very closely with state governments, now slowly with the central government as well, to make sure that career education becomes part of high school. Last year, along with UNICEF, Yuva, the government passed mandates to say that, okay, career facilitators need to be appointed in every high school. So that's the scaling up, sustaining it, making sure it's part of the system. Today, I mean, it's a no-brainer. If you ask people, do young people need career guidance? Everyone says yes. So hopefully it'll become part of the system. So scaling out and scaling up. But we know that's only one part of the solution. India has deep rooted inequities because of gender, because of caste, because of community, now because of climate change and migration, the things that are happening, increased automation, and what is relevant, who is relevant, right? Also, in many states, we've had extended periods of jobless growth. Then, who gets the jobs that are available, right? Who gets the largest slice of the pie that's there? So, these are deep issues that we need to tackle. So the way we are looking at the next 10 years is how can we be fast, make sure that every state has strong career education and a cadre of strong career facilitators who are helping students make that transition, and how can we be just, how can we make sure that it's truly inclusive for all the marginalization. So we're looking at, you know, the whole, making sure we are fast and just in the way young people make the transition from school to work.
And a final question to you about youth and young women. What is your take? What is the hope that you have for them?
I think our hope is still the vision that we have, that every young adult in the world, not just in India, is productively, passionately, and positively engaged in a career of their choice. Because purpose and being engaged in a purposeful manner solves for so many issues, right? You feel fulfilled as a human being, and that's so important.
Super. Thank you so much, Priya, for this wonderful conversation and sharing all the insights that you did.
It's been a pleasure, Santosh, and it's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.